Okay. Travis, are you good? Oh, let me start.
Nobody in the public.
This conference will now be recorded.
It's been a lot of municipal government stuff this week.
There has been. Yep.
All right, so I will officially call to order this organizational meeting of the South Burlington City Council on Thursday, March 9th, 2023 at 6:31 p.m. I am Jessie Baker, City Manager presiding until the council elects a chair for the year. So we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I will have Helen lead that. Since you don't.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So the next item on our agenda are instructions on exiting the building in case of emergency. Go out the doors and back, turn right or left. If for folks participating online, if you would like to speak, turn your camera on or indicate you'd like to speak in the chat and I will call on you. Thanks, Sue. Agenda review. This is an opportunity to make any changes or deletions to the agenda or change the order of the agenda. Also an opportunity to pull things off the consent agenda if people so choose. This is awkward presiding, but I would respectfully request that the council add a late agenda item tonight. I sent this to you in an email. That agenda item is specifically to approve the submittal of the FY24 congressionally directed spending applications, any supporting letters on behalf of the council, and commit the related local matches. And I suggest you add that as a new number 13.
Do you need a motion for that?
Yes, please.
So I'll move what you just said.
Second.
I'm sorry. Moved by Tim, seconded by Megan. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. You are unanimous. And then actually, I should have clarified this at the beginning. So a motion to approve the agenda overall with that addition.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Tim, second by Megan. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We have an agenda. So the next item on our agenda is comments or questions from the public not related to an item on our agenda. We have no public here tonight. So we will keep going. So the next item on our agenda under section 13303 of our municipal charter, the council is to elect a city council chair, vice chair, and clerk. So I will open the table for discussions of those positions.
Could I nominate a slate?
Sure.
Okay, so I would nominate Helen Reilly as chair, Megan Emery as vice chair, and Timothy Barrett as clerk. Repeating the same slate we had last year.
Sounds right. Yes, second.
All right, motion by Tim, second by Megan. Any discussion? Anyone want to reject the nomination? All right. All in favors of the maintaining the current slate of officers, please say aye.
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 Great, you are unanimous, and I will step down as your presiding officer.
Now, what job does Tyler get? Is that special job of
It used to be clerk. They got to check all of the minutes.
It's cleaner, but better or something. Yeah.
Like freshman year of college. That's right.
I just love Sue's minutes so much.
Well, I must say this was much easier than the organization of the U.S. House of Representatives. A little quicker. Thankfully. And so I just would start with just a few comments. Thank you very much. It's an honor. I enjoy presiding. I've done it for a while, certainly. And I certainly pledge to really continue what I think has been the manner in which I've tried to lead the council, and that is, thoughtfully and respecting differences of opinions and allowing anyone and everyone who needs to speak have that opportunity. For Tyler, the chair typically develops the agenda with the city manager, but all council members are welcome to request items for an agenda, so, ahead of time, so it can be, or sometimes we do it under new business. And we'll work on arranging that in a way where we have the right time and not try to overload one meeting with everything and then have the next one have two items. And you will note that there's a sort of a long-range agenda planner that you can always look at and then make recommendations that way too. So we try to be very engage everyone and include all the topics that counselors feel are important. I mean, and even if a public member comes to you and says, I think you really ought to bring this up, and sometimes they do, and we will add them to our advanced calendar. So that's kind of my spiel. That's how I'll continue to try to lead, and hopefully, given the votes on significant spending and bonds, how overwhelming this community has supported the work of the council as well as the school board.
Both passed.
It's really very gratifying, and I kind of feel like they really are supportive of the measures we've taken, of Jesse's leadership, and certainly the decisions that the council has made. So that was very encouraging. Item 6, counselors' announcements and reports on committee assignments. Are there any? Did anyone have a meeting?
No, but I just have an announcement.
Okay, you may announce.
So the UVM women's basketball team is playing the Championship for America East tomorrow at Patrick Gym, starting at 5 p.m. I believe there are over 1,000 general admission tickets still left. I believe they're $18 each. If you want them, either order them online tonight or go there tomorrow and stand in line. So I want to say go Cats, go UVM,
Yeah,
right?
I'll say.
Other than that, voting was very smooth at Chamberlain on Tuesday. No hiccups with the machines. I think
One
Megan
jam.
had to fix one hiccup. Maybe she can talk about that at her chance. And so I heard there were some other problems with batteries in some of the machines. So,
Right.
But other than that, it went well. It was a slow, steady stream of voters all day long, and we wrapped up very quickly due to the excellent tabulating skills of Ms. Emery and the paper fetching skills out of the bin by me. So, but I thank everybody for their help and for the volunteers and people that came and worked at the desk and worked back by the machine as well. Thanks.
Great. Okay, Megan?
Yeah, I'll second that. It's nice when elections run smoothly. They always have. And Tim is the election official. I worked under you twice, and I think it's amazing how you remember, because these elections are spread far apart, and you remember things that I have to go back and look in the booklet to remind myself. Even after a BCA meeting, I have to go back. What did we say? So I just wanted to say that we did have a charter review committee last night. I was in and out. Unfortunately, my schedule changed, and so the meeting time didn't work as well with my schedule. I had commitments at work and then a family commitment that I had to get to, and the bus was not an excellent way to follow the meeting. So I think that the committee arrived at a final list of pros and cons. You talked about outreach, and I believe that there's going to be a pretty wide outreach. They're going to go before the school board. But in addition to that, we're going to go there. I'm just the liaison. They're going to go before several associations in town. So there's the SBBA, the South Burlington Land Trust, the Rotary Club, and help me, Jesse, if there are any others.
PTO, they wanted to
PTO,
visit with
good.
library trustees and
Trustees.
outreach to the policy committees as well.
Right. And then there will also be Saturday morning meetings or meetings kind of on different, for the public, the general public to attend.
Yep, they haven't come to those dates yet, but finalizing the dates of some
Okay.
community engagement events.
Yeah. So I just want to really recognize the work of those committee members, including our clerk, who I don't know if she'll continue on the charter review committee, but I thought that the group worked really well together, and we have, of course, a new, a couple of new members or just one new member, and it was, I thought, a really good working group that really did a nice job of distilling down what kind of presentation to make to a public who, might not see all of the immediate details of, and we're talking about the makeup of the council, how many counselors, whether they represent the city at large or districts, and then talking
having a
about
mayor.
a city manager versus a mayor, and then there's another kind of mayor. So just going through the pros and cons, and they got into really fine detail. It was a really good group, but without getting, too esoteric, so that the average person wouldn't be able to gather, I think, some useful information in order to determine which form of government and school board they would like to see.
Because they participated also.
There was some participation. Yeah.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what they come up with.
Yep.
Yeah. And I'm glad they're doing the outreach. That's great. Do you have any announcements?
I do not have any announcements. I
Yeah.
did, and I'm still drinking from the fire hose, so to speak. So yeah, but I'm very excited. I'm honored, and I'm incredibly enthusiastic to be here. So thank you.
Okay.
This will be the shortest meeting
This will. Yeah, this
of the
will.
whole year, Tyler.
Exactly.
So enjoy.
Right,
Yeah.
buckle up.
So-
All right.
Exactly. I just want to acknowledge the incredible job that our city clerk did this election. She, we did have a few hiccups. The what do you call it? The battery wasn't working, so we had to try another one, and that hadn't been charged. So it took a little while to get that charged and up to speed, but it was, we just had people put them in that slot in the back and then added them later. But she just does a marvelous job, and this will be one of the new duties that you get to have that I never knew when I ran, that I'd be running elections. But it's fun, and it's, I think it's really comforting. You have all this political stuff all over the country where, there's all these terrible things going on with balloting, and once you participate and you recognize how many steps that we take in terms of making sure ballots are open properly and they're signed and they're sealed and they're, people are checked off and it's like triple checked, it's really comforting to know that, there's potentially a couple human errors that we catch and fix. Someone checks off the wrong name on the line, and you have to white it out or make a note and say, no, I really meant this person. But it really is. I don't know. I think a lot is due to our wonderful training from Donna Kimball, and she'll be missed, but she will be helping the replacement, whoever that is. So I'm confident that we really won't miss a beat. But she's great to work with.
I think she's left a legacy of organization
Mhm.
that if followed, in the future elections, then that template will serve whoever it is very well.
Yeah.
So
So it's
That
great.
and good humor. On very little sleep. Good humor.
Oh, I know.
On very little sleep.
and
Very
thank you for the pizza instead of calzone at dinner. Thank you.
if she's watching, okay. All right. City managers report.
Thank you. I do have a couple of updates for you tonight. One, want to welcome Councillor Barnes and Councillor Chalnick, who will join us at our next meeting. On May 20th, I will do orientation to for the new counselors, and happy to answer any questions on the 20th, as well as the annual
May or
March
March?
20th.
March 20th.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, okay. I was thinking,
March 20th.
boy, you're going to give them some time to come up with some questions, huh?
You'll be fine for the first 2 months. Don't worry. And then I was also thinking we would do council liaison appointments in the first meeting in April, just because we do have a lot on the March 20th agenda right now.
Okay, that sounds good.
We also just do want to thank the voters. As Helen alluded to, we had really significant support for the ballot items and budget that the leadership team and the council put forward, with 72 to 87% approval rate, which I take as a huge honor for our shared work together. And please know that the leadership team is really excited to continue the work and build some stuff and get going on these projects. Also wanted the council to know that the state auditor is about halfway through his process of auditing our tax increment financing district. This is a requirement under the state statute. It's done every 5 years. So far, lots of good questions. Some areas where we're providing additional information, but all things that we think we can appropriately address thus far. We did get the estimated bill for the audit, which is $83,367 that we pay the state auditor to do this service
much?
for us.
Oh,
So
wow. What did you say?
$83,367.
Can we pay for that with TIF bond?
We can't pay for it with TIF bond,
I
but we
believe you
can
roll
pay
it in.
for it with TIF increment.
Okay, thank you.
Good Lord.
Supporting our state employees. I also want the council to know we are very actively moving forward on the Dorset Street shared use path that's been in planning for a while. The easement deeds that we need to complete that project have all been drafted and reviewed by our grantors. And we will start reaching out to neighbors in the next month to purchase and acquire the easements we need for that project. You as counselors may hear from those neighbors, so I wanted you to know that that was forthcoming. We talked about charter committee. A couple of other quick heads up. The Myers Court permit appeal, which is the ADU case.
Your neighbor.
Yeah, your neighbor, where the ADU is built higher than permitted. We are going to trial on that case. We were not able to mediate it, so Colin and Amanda are working on preparing for that trial. That trial will be March 22nd and 23rd. We don't know how it will turn out. So
Is that environment?
Yep. Also want to give the council a heads up that starting for your March 20th meeting, we are going to start phasing out your council box and move to SharePoint for the documents that are currently shared in the box. That allows us to get rid of the cost of maintaining the box because we already pay for SharePoint. Allows the data to be stored on our server, and I think actually will be easier for you to search.
Oh, good.
So a whole new system to learn. We will run them in parallel for a couple of meetings, so we're sure everyone has access to everything, but want you to know that change was coming. And then finally, there are 2 events happening on Saturday at the library related to veterans and veteran services. So there's a Veterans Journey panel there and back at 11 a.m. and then at 1 p.m. a vet town hall. So if folks are interested in that, we encourage you all to come out. That's what I have.
Okay. I am blown away with how much we have to pay the state to do an audit that they require. Don't our tax dollars support the audit? Auditor and his... Wow. Okay. Item 7, the consent agenda. We have 3 items. The disbursements, minutes from February 6th and February 21st, and the award of a landscaping bid to Vermont Stone and Horticulture.
I'll move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments or thoughts? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, so that passes. Going on to item 8, approve the annual appointments of various city officials pursuant to the city charter, chapter 13, section 301, sub 2, and relevant municipal ordinances. So Jesse has a whole list. Oh, I have it, sorry. And it basically
Do you
are,
want me to run through them?
do we want to run through them?
Can I, or I'll summarize?
I mean,
Yeah.
is there any change from last year because personnel change that would just highlight what
Sure.
that is?
So there's, as Helen mentioned, there's two sections of appointments. There's the ones that are in our charter, and there's ones that are in our ordinances. The significant, everyone currently on this list is currently employed by the city and doing this job. There have been a couple of personnel changes since last year's appointment that you've made interim in between year appointments. So Martha Machar is now our city treasurer, with Donna Kinville as our assistant city treasurer. Delilah Hall left as our zoning administrator, and Marty Gillies was hired, so he is now filling the seats that Delilah was previously taking. So those are assistant zoning administrator and assistant telecommunications officer and assistant code enforcement officer. So these are positions: treasurer, city attorney, who is on the screen now. Colin is here with us. Zoning administrator and the assistant zoning administrators, constables, grand juror, and city agent, as well as our code enforcement officers, telecommunication officers, emergency management director, building inspector, and health officer. And they're all for 1-year terms.
So I'll move that we approve all of these, I guess, incumbents to the annual appointments of various city officials pursuant to the city charter and relevant municipal ordinances.
Would Mr. Barnes like to second that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor, then signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, moving on then to the city council meeting schedule.
So I attached in your agenda a quick 1-page memo about the dates you are to set your meeting dates per the charter. They're to be held at least twice a month. So right now we are currently meeting on the first and third Mondays of the month. That seems to be working well. I've given you a schedule here of those dates. There are two specific meetings I wanted to call out just to check with you all. So one, right now we have a meeting scheduled for June 19th, Monday, June 19th, which is Juneteenth. So we could either keep the meeting, continue as is. We could use the meeting, have a meeting, but do some kind of acknowledgement of Juneteenth at that meeting, or we could reschedule it. So that's one outstanding question. The second question is, currently we have a meeting scheduled for July 3rd, the evening of July 3rd. Seems like a challenging time to have a meeting. So I would recommend that we move that meeting date to Monday, July 10th. I reviewed that with our city assessor because that is the meeting where you will need to set the tax rate for fiscal year 24. And assuming that we can set it that evening, tax bills can be printed by the end of that week and go out and meet the required notice to the taxpayers. So that is okay with her. So just wanted to call your attention to those two specifically. And if you are okay moving forward as is, you can adopt as presented.
I like the idea of meeting on Juneteenth and using it as a method of, I don't know, educating the public or reminding them what it is and its significance. We could probably have, I don't know, a little presentation or something by someone just to acknowledge that rather than meet on another day and the public would just know that we're meeting on a Tuesday, not a Monday, and might not really appreciate why.
As long as we, do something to memorialize, the meaning of that date, I would be.
I think it would be a good opportunity to do that.
No, I agree, and particularly if we are able to have someone who can help provide some additional context around it and a voice that is perhaps better representative of why it's important. I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
Use the platform that we have.
That sound okay? Jesse?
Yeah, that sounds great. I'm thinking, is that a good time to do a partial reading of Frederick Douglass's speech to the Rochester Lady Club from 1859 or 54, whatever it was? Because that was for July 4th. That was specific. Have you read that speech?
Well, I probably have,
Okay.
but I don't.
Well, Bob Walsh used to lead a discussion at the
Yes.
library
Yeah.
several years in a row. So, but it may not be totally relevant, but it's certainly it adds context. So, but anyway,
Okay.
yeah, just an idea. So,
Who could we have lead that discussion? Do we have some candidates?
I don't have some candidates off the top of my head, but I will go out to some of our community partners and see what I can put together for that evening.
Great.
And if people have ideas
Yeah.
of organizations to outreach to or individuals.
Oh, I know. Lydia Diamond might be interesting, particularly given her the race that she just ran, and I know she sent an email out regarding Juneteenth as during the campaign. It might be worth including her on the invite list.
That's a great idea.
Okay. I think there is a statewide organization, actually. So I think there are some people who have been working on this for a long time, and so would be probably thrilled to have a portion of a city council meeting taped, maybe with an audience to explain the meeting and why it's important and that kind of stuff. And I like the not having a meeting on some night that people have fireworks around the community. We'll have our own on the 10th, possibly. Okay.
you need a motion for that schedule? So I'll move that we accept the schedule that the city manager has put forth before us for future city council meetings.
A second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Number 10, designate official paper of record, currently the other paper. Yes, I would encourage us to continue with the other paper.
All right, so I will
Unless
move.
someone has another idea.
I move that we designate the official paper of record as the other paper.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Designate the official depositories, currently the TD Bank. And unless I hear otherwise from the city manager, I would think we'd want to continue. They've been good to us recently with different kinds of, payments and,
Just one question though.
yeah.
Do you know if they are keeping up with the increasing interest rates for deposit rates? Have they increased their deposit rates commensurately with the Fed?
Yes.
Okay, so you're satisfied with that because many local banks are way far behind and do not intend to increase. I mean, I saw the Federal Credit Union bumped up an 18-month CD by like 0.4,
Right.
but that's the nature of the beast. So anyway, so good.
Okay.
Just
So-
something to consider, and I'm not recommending this for this current cycle. Nor I don't think it would be appropriate for me to vote on it because I do a lot of business with them. But so I would have to abstain. But something to consider for the future would be potentially exploring avenues to work with Opportunities Credit Union. They're a mission-driven organization, and they do a lot to help folks who've otherwise been marginalized and who are excluded from the banking system. They do a great job including them, and it would be wonderful to if we could at some point in the future figure out a way to incorporate them and to show a sign of support for their business. But just for future
And
thought.
what is the name? Opportunities Credit Union?
Opportunities Credit Union. Yeah, they have a branch in Winooski and they have a branch in on North Avenue.
Well,
Just-
go ahead.
On that point, we did a fair amount of work with them in Winooski. They partnered. We partnered with them on a first-time home buying loan. They have a lot of products where if a community is putting up some dollars, they will match it with other programs they have. So it's a bigger investment. So it's maybe something we want to think about as we think about implementing a climate action plan or doing more with affordable housing and loan programs and whatnot. They do offer some pretty unique things. I think that's really their specialty as opposed to being the primary holder of our funds.
Yeah, I don't know if I could in good conscience recommend using them exclusively, but they could be an interesting financing partner on certain projects for sure.
Yeah, well, I think we often look afield for that kind of partnership, and that would be great. And I think that's a good idea in terms of, some of our affordable housing activity as well as the climate plan.
You need a motion on that?
Yes, please.
So I'll move that we designate TD Bank as the official depository bank for the city of South Burlington for the next year.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So that passes. That's approved. Appoint a council representative to the Pension Advisory Committee.
So Tim, are you willing to serve?
I'm willing.
Okay, I would like to nominate Tim Barrett as our council representative to the Pension Advisory Committee.
And I will second that. He's done a good job.
Don't look at the stock market today, but don't look at it anyway.
Well, can't keep looking at it every day and make decisions.
Once a month. Once a month.
Okay, is there any discussion? All in favor of appointing Tim Barrett to the Pension Advisory Committee?
Aye.
Aye.
Other business, we have the congressional thing, right?
Yep.
And I actually have one thing that I just would like a brief kind of conversation amongst us that I think would be good to have. So the congressional
Directed spending. Sure. Thank
directed
you.
spending, yeah.
Yeah.
Woohoo.
So Alana did a quick memo on this. The upside is, as folks probably remember, with kind of the reinstitution of the earmark program in Congress, each of our delegation have the opportunity to submit specific projects for consideration. The deadlines happen very quickly as the appropriation process kicks up in Washington. So we've met with each representatives from each of our delegation offices and are recommending to you that we submit funding requests for several projects. Key things to note are these are all projects that you have already approved in some way in other settings, several of them multiple times. It would be a way to be nimble and find other funds to bring into projects, so to lower the potential amount of debt we have to incur, to potentially not have to value engineer projects quite so much, or address some funding gaps we do have in some of the projects. So the specific ones we're looking at are the east-west crossing over 89, the Williston Road Streetscape project, the energy efficiency improvement project of Bartlett Bay that we submitted last year to Senator Bernie Sanders, and the newest one, although you've supported lots of stormwater projects in the past, is a public-private stormwater project at Farrell Street to support some of the affordable housing development that's there. There's a stormwater project that's kind of failing that we need to revamp. So we thought that would be we heard from one of the delegation offices that would be a competitive partnership application with Cathedral Square and CHT.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the summary. I don't believe this is controversial. I think this is just approval of us going to try and get some more money to existing projects.
Yes. Oh, I have a problem with that. No.
But so to be clear, these are we recommending the totality of these four?
So we are recommending each of those
each of
four to different congressional offices.
Okay.
The bridge will likely recommend to 2 offices. We've tried to match what the individual representatives' interests are to specific applications.
Understood. Okay, thank you.
Good question.
So I'll move that we approve this request for congressional funding. Is that a correct term?
Second.
To fund those TIF projects and that have been approved.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any other questions or comments?
Just do we, if we've already, particularly so the bike bridge in particular, if we've already voted on it, is there any, are we under any obligation to notify, just as a point of order, are we to notify voters that if let's say that this works out?
Yeah.
Or I just am curious as to.
Yeah, well,
There's a local.
the voters have approved the bonding
Mhm.
for that, and then there's a local match, and my understanding is we're $500,000 short.
Right, I think that's my memory
So we
too.
have a gap.
Gap.
And so this is, and we've committed to the voters that we will try to find some
the
money
gap. Okay.
to fill that gap. So that typically is what these do.
Okay.
And if I could just add a sentence to that, for all of our projects, we, when we bond a project, that is an authorization for the council to borrow up to that amount. But if we can always leverage additional funds, grant funds into a project to lower that
To
amount.
lower the cost.
So it's not saying we have to borrow this much. So if we can find $1 million for Bartlett Bay plant, then the $33.4 million that was authorized would become $32.4
$2
million.
million. Okay.
And the council in public session has to approve those bonding documents. So we will. That's the kind of the official notification to the community of what debt we are incurring.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, good. So do we need to vote on that, or did we just do that?
We have a
Okay.
public question.
Oh.
It seems.
Yeah, Roseanne.
Roseanne, do you have a question on this?
Yeah, I am so sorry to bust into your meeting, but I didn't know how to communicate. I want to attend the comprehensive plan SEQ meeting, but the link is not working. And I don't know if you can communicate with who's ever running that meeting that no one can get online. So I didn't know how to communicate that, but I thought you might be in session. So sorry for disrupting your meeting.
Okay, thank you, Roseanne.
Okay.
I will text people up in that room and let them know.
All right. Okay, so we did vote on that. So I just wanted to have a brief conversation just to get a sense, for both for Jesse and myself, kind of what are some of the, and we have the, all these plans and a work plan, and it's pretty organized in terms of what are some of the projects and goals and things that the city is working toward. But as you act as a commissioner or a council person, there's other things that you can bring to the table. And I wanted to get a sense of, I don't know, one or two kind of like burning issues, if you will, or things that you think are really important for the city to be aware of in maybe the next 6 months. And I'm happy to start. I have two things, and one is I think we really need to be working very closely with the legislature to make sure that the housing bill and other associated bills for that topic really don't run roughshod over local control and all of the work that this community has done to make sure that the building, the development in our community is where we want it to be, and not let sort of a one-size-fits-all from the state's perspective really override and undermine, I think, some of the incredible work that this community has done in terms of affordable housing and our support for that, and just housing in general. But at the same time, looking at the need to preserve some resources. So I think that's very important for the council and the city to be very active in those conversations in Montpelier. Mm-hmm. I mean, it can get right down to, is it local control, or, I mean, why would we do anything if the legislature was going to decide for us and it didn't matter? Mm-hmm. And we didn't really need to reach out to the public. And then my second thing is, I think we need to really help and creatively think and actively engage in new ways, additional ways to really engage the public in our conversations about what we can do and should do and how we go about trying to meet some of our climate goals. I think that requires a lot of conversation. And we really need to listen to them, we need to ask them. And I think it's an important aspect of our work that we don't have every year, that something that large and that kind of outreach. But I think it's really critical for us to be aware of that and contribute and really talk about it and figure out, what it is we might want to do. Tim, do you want to?
Well, yeah, I was thinking about this earlier, and the thing that I'm focused on is we've already discussed it, and I've already talked about it before. But before I say that, the thing is, I want to comment that I think that the council and the city staff and city manager have done a lot of great work over the last year, over the last 3 years, right? Especially through interim zoning and the LDRs that were formulated by the Planning Commission that they voted on 7-0 that we passed, right? That I think are in jeopardy now because the State House has some idea that they think that their experience with LDRs is superior to ours. So I agree with you that it really bothers me that's starting to roll through the State House. But we have a lot of other initiatives that we're moving forward on. And we have a Climate Action Task Force that delivered a report. It gives us a pathway. People just need to learn to understand what are the things that we can do over the next X number of years to stop burning fossil fuels. That's what it all boils down to. Mm-hmm. You got to stop burning stuff and making CO2. That means there are going to be some interesting, difficult choices as, capital turnover happens in homes when heating systems fail or need to be replaced and things like that. In new construction, we've already taken a giant step on new construction, right? Mm-hmm. We also have heavily subsidized a lot of affordable housing in this city, right? Between our housing trust, right, and the permits that we've paid for affordable housing on this street, and the ARPA funds that we've directed towards the Summit properties, and they're already up on the 3rd floor in construction on that, right? So I think that everything we're doing is moving in the right direction, and so I don't have any. I mean, we could be doing something faster or slower, or whatever it is, but the fact I don't have any big problems right now. But the one thing I would like to do, which really piggybacks on what Megan's been looking at, which is, short-term rentals, right? And how do we get our hands wrapped around that in an incremental way so that people understand, well, what's the first thing that we want to do? The first thing we want to do is make sure that if you are renting any part of your house, a single bedroom or something to somebody or an apartment, it has to be safe from a fire perspective. It's got to have hardwired, interconnected smoke detectors, and that's the number one thing. I don't want anybody to suffer in a fire where they've rented and paid for something and they didn't have protection from proper smoke and carbon monoxide. That just would be a complete disaster. I mean, every home should have that, but if you're receiving remuneration, right, for a rental, you better be able to tell that renter that they are at least protected for that. And we do that automatically, right, for all new construction. So I'd really like to see an emphasis on that because that gets the visibility to all of those units that are out there, right, that may be like running on Airbnb or Vrbo or Craigslist or whatever it is, right, and so that's if I had to isolate one thing that I want to move forward in, that's what it is.
Megan?
Yeah, well, I have to say that I am frustrated that mandates come down from the state and it's not always thought through. And I understand the really positive spirit behind these projects, but devil's in the details. And so looking at not only the housing bill, but also it was brought up on Monday night after the city councilor candidate spoke. The school board was asked to respond to a bill that would require all public schools to educate 4-year-olds. And we're dealing with severe space concerns in 2 of our 3 elementary schools. And it's these kinds of mandates, which again, the housing bill is a similar mandate, because if you bring in more residents, you need schools. You need schools for their children. You need emergency services. You need to provide services that make life more than tolerable, but actual thriving should occur ideally, right? So just injecting one mandate without considering all the attendant pieces puts a real strain on our taxpayers. And coming from a big city myself, taxes are high in big cities. And so I really think that educating and talking with people in the legislature has to continue, not only about how our natural infrastructure provides for our citizens and their well-being and our ecosystems and the lake and all the things that we've put into I thought a very thoughtful plan where we would have just as much emphasis put on housing, but I also think talking about the real cost of living here in South Burlington. We are very fortunate that our voters approved both budgets and the bonds, and it's something that will not be sustainable if we have unlimited control over this injection of new residents and what they will require in order to have a good life here. And I believe, and I express this to people, to legislators in a letter, that they may in fact not be serving the people that they want to serve. I mean, big cities are often places that people leave because they are expensive, and the services just then the quality goes down. And so people who can afford to leave do leave. And I think that the spirit of these housing and 4-year-olds in our public schools, I totally am on board with that spirit, but they cannot just assume that big cities will take care of themselves. Because we have example upon example upon example throughout this country where it's just not sustainable for a lot of people. We abandon public schools, we go into charter schools. I mean, all kinds of things. And I think that moving to predominantly rental properties is a real concern. When we hear 60, I don't know if that's true because I can't remember the number, but 16%, if that's truly the number that voted on our town meeting day, I can't expect that number to increase at all when we have predominantly rental properties here. They just don't feel invested in this community the way that property owners do. And what does that mean for our schools? What does that mean for our services? What does that mean for a community that we hope will be thriving in 20, 30, 40 years? So really, how can they provide incentives for people to be homeowners? And how can we provide incentives as a state for housing that is developed to be home or owner occupied housing? And I think that comes down to short-term rentals as well. The legislature in the House Ways and Means Committee, they watched Joe Minicozzi. Several of us watched a similar presentation a couple of years ago. And he, at the very end, addressed Airbnbs. And he said they need to be taxed as commercial properties. They cannot be taxed as residential properties because they're not. They're hotels. And they are taking housing off of our rolls here and out of the market. And I'm very frustrated with our legislature right now. I find that there's a lot of good sentiment, but there aren't true solutions that they are proposing to make sure that we grow in a way that makes sure that all of our residents throughout the state
have the services that they need, live in a community that is affordable. I mean, we're going to price people out of their homes if we continue at this pace, right? And so those are, it's a, anyway.
Yeah, no, well, it's obviously a
It's a
large
lot.
issue. Yeah, and things are all interconnected. Yeah. Tyler, some thoughts on, you
Yeah,
thought about this because you recently ran.
I have. Well, I think the most pressing thing for me in what I heard and what I learned in my campaign, I am increasingly concerned about public safety and our ability to staff and provide the services that folks expect from both our fire, first responder, and police force. I've had great conversations with both chiefs, and a tremendous amount of respect for them, and folks, particularly within the firehouse. I'm good personal friends with them, and I think historically, and this is just my gut impression. Historically, they have done an exceptional job tempering their asks for what they really need to be effective in their roles in keeping us safe, both fire and police. And I commend them for that. I think fiduciary responsibility is very important. However, I can't help but wonder if perhaps we are the margins are perhaps a bit too thin. And particularly with regional dispatch not materializing as we'd hoped, and with the increase in crime that we've seen, that we're continuing to see within Chittenden County as a whole and within our community, I'm concerned that that if we don't address that, and if we don't really do a deep dive, not by any means to suggest that they haven't done their homework, but perhaps maybe getting a sense from them is, look, are these proposals are these budgets that you're putting forth, are these what you need to survive, or do these account for challenges that we might face in the future? I'd like some additional visibility into that, and I'd like to make sure that we are proactive and that we provide them with the support that they need to make sure that we're able as a community to provide citizens with the public safety measures that they need and that they deserve and that they expect. So that's, then some of that is an education thing for me. So, but that's something that I'm concerned about, and that I would like to address, and I plan to dive into and educate myself on. And Helen and Megan, to your points about the state legislature, yes, I share concerns from a 60,000 foot view, 80,000 foot view. Anytime that the state imposes mandates on individual communities, I think that's something that's serious, and I think it's something we need to look at. But in this case, I'm excited to a certain degree to engage with them. I don't feel like, and maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I'm naive. As a new counselor, I'm very green. I get it, and I accept that and I own that. But I don't, knowing what I know about state legislature, I can't help but wonder if they wouldn't be taking such measures if perhaps there were things that they also were equally concerned about. It's a big step for them to consider intruding, and I'm excited to engage and to hear what they have to say, and perhaps there's a win-win for everybody. So I'm excited to learn a lot more about that, and good alone, better together. Perhaps there's some middle ground somewhere along the line that could help meet the state's aims, particularly with regard to housing, and that could help us further refine our policies in a way that'll make the community that much richer.
Well, I think I think all of our frustrations and points is that the goals for the legislature for housing we definitely share. The frustration is we've been working on it for quite a few years, and we've built a lot of housing, and we have rules and regulations in place that reflect this community's values and where we are and where we believe the best housing is. I think I know the legislature is looking statewide, and there's lots of towns that through their zoning exclude affordable housing or dense housing. And by design, it's 2-acre, 5-acre, 10-acre, 20-acre tracts. And that it works well for them, but it doesn't help to mutually or collaboratively address housing. And so my concern is that they will undo some of the things that we have already really talked a lot about, worked on, discussed, have played out. We've built a lot of housing. And just look down Market Street, and but we're also in a place where we have some challenges with finding and building the schools and the services, police,
Police and
fire,
fire.
everything, library, rec, parks, all those things, roads. If we are told, well, it doesn't matter what you've done, these are the new rules, and they override. So I guess I agree with you. We need to work with them, and my plea is we just really need to, because typically the city hasn't been like real hard nosed about going to the legislature. Occasionally we have, but we haven't really interacted as much. But to me, this is like, hey, wait a minute. You might throw the baby out with the bathwater because you want to help East Hardwick build more housing, and then you're going to really undermine what this community has really committed to in dollars and thinking and regulations. So
I have a question. Oh.
yeah, go ahead.
I listened to the Vermont edition this week, and Senator Ram Hinsdale, she said that both you and Paul had sat down with her and agreed on the language, the current language of the bill. Is that what your understanding of that discussion was?
So I have not listened to the Vermont edition. I have not met with Senator Ram Hinsdale on the housing bill. Paul and Helen have been doing that. Helen did bring this up to me at the polls on Tuesday, and honestly, I haven't had a moment to cycle back to her. But Paul has done I can walk you through that if you want, Tyler, afterwards. Paul has provided lots of testimony with Helen and in writing that you've all seen, and also signed, as he mentioned last time he was here, a letter with the planning directors of Burlington Winooski talking about Act 250 delegation. But other than that, to my knowledge, he's had no other conversations with her directly.
I think the conversations were clearly that the city presented support for the overall concepts, concern about language in several places, and that we could support the bill if they supported our amendments, because that would fix the problems for South Burlington. And that really was the conversation, and that's what was said. I never did we say we support the bill as you have presented. It was the concepts. We've done a lot. We've shared with them the kinds of things we've tried and done. We're the only city in the state that uses TDRs to, focus density, and that's what we were requesting.
So Paul
So
did
she
not.
misspoke.
Okay, so Paul did not return after, was it 2 meetings
No,
ago?
he's written two letters, one Winooski and Burlington, and then the other one that we got a little while ago. But none of those amendments were included in the General Affairs and Housing Committee
I see.
bill.
And the second letter he sent following your last council meeting with the red bullets, that was approved after the bill had gone from Senate Economic to Natural Resources. So he sent that bill to he sent that communication to Natural Resources. So it was after it moved out of that committee.
Okay. And the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, have they, I mean, I'm just curious why she used your name. Maybe it was just misspeaking, but was there something that the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, approved of or came down on this bill in some way? Because she's also claimed that Vermont League of Cities and Towns was approving, and that's what led to some environmental groups not to approve of it anymore. I don't know.
So I did meet with both Representative Bongartz and Senator Ron Hinsdale as part of the VLCT board in December before the session was convened. That's the last time I had any conversation with them through the league. The league is, I think, providing active testimony. Their position, and you can read this in Ted Brady. It's been a long week. Ted Brady did an op-ed. It's on the VLCT website. You can read it. The issue that VLCT is trying to walk, and I mentioned this when we had our first council meeting about this, is the league is trying very hard not to be a voice of no, is trying to be that voice of we want to be a state partner in meeting both the workforce and housing demands, crisis that our state faces, but also, protect local control and protect the voices of municipalities. So they have not come out and said, absolutely not. What they have tried to talk about is the Act 250. If you're going to address local permitting, you have to address state permitting inefficiencies as well. That's pretty much, and the just fixing local permitting isn't going to actually solve the problem. It's a much more nuanced crisis statewide.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't talk to what the two lobbyists who work for the league have said offline, but it has not been with me.
So, Helen, are you suggesting that we return to Montpelier, and how would that
Well,
When's
conversation?
Pardon?
Crossovers next week or
March 17th.
Yeah. Well, we
So-
definitely. I think Paul has reached out to the Natural Resources and Energy Committee, and that's the next stop along the way. And I'd like to think that some of our concerns would fall on receptive ears there. Because their thing isn't just, I want to do housing. I mean, they get it that we need housing. But they also, I suspect, want to maintain natural sensitive areas. They are very supportive of the climate change and how every community needs to step up to that. And we've adopted a climate plan as well. So I think, I would like to think that they would be receptive to some of our concerns, to not undermine or undo what we as a community have identified as critical environmental places.
But you had suggested that we actually go to Montpelier. How would that happen?
We could. Paul could go, or you can get on the Zoom and be part of the conversation that way.
So I think the direction you provided at the last meeting was within those 4 areas and those red bullets that Paul had within that guidance had the ability to go and testify on our behalf to maintain those value statements. And that is what he has reached out. So he has sent a written communication on that to the committee and has said he would like to come in and speak with the committee
Okay.
about it. They're not in session this week, so none of that work is happening
Okay.
yet. But I imagine my hope is that they would take him up on that offer to provide testimony, and then I think it's, to me, the next step from there is seeing what if anything gets out of that committee through crossover, and then at a board meeting about this issue, once it hits the House, if there's a different strategy the council wants to take, we could do that. But that's the guidance we're working under right now.
And it may not have to hit crossover because it has to go to appropriations, because within the bill there's,
That's true.
I don't know, $10 million here and 15 there, and it has a lot of money. And so that will go to appropriations, and they'll have to figure that out. And well, it depends on the bill. I mean, they could take it right up, but by committing all these tens of millions of dollars that are in it, that impacts their decisions on the overall budget. You know, all this sort of ARPA money and stuff, there's only so much of it, and once you spend it, it's gone, and they may have other ideas of how to better spend it. So that's the other piece. So there's a little more time, I think, and then it goes to the House. So there's quite a few bites.
And if it doesn't make crossover, what does that mean?
Well, then it's not guaranteed to be acted upon. You can still send bills over to the other body after crossover, but that's a process that gives the other body ample time to deal with those issues and not get slammed in, last 2 weeks of the legislature, and you've got really intricate, incredible bills that everyone wants that you don't have time to research and understand. So that's what crossover is. But on really important bills that have funding, there's some leeway.
It's like we need wording inserted into that legislation that's similar to what we did for UVM with our LDRs.
Oh. Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts? I mean, I did have another conversation with at our joint leadership meeting with the school board. And of course, Travi isn't chair any longer, but at that meeting, we discussed, and I said I would work on it. So I'm going to ask you all. I thought it might be helpful to have a like a dinner with the 5 school board members and the 5 of us, and then the superintendent and the city manager, really just to kind of get to know each other and maybe talk a little bit about maybe our concerns about education, maybe their concerns about the environment. I don't know. I mean, but it seems like we should work with them a lot more closely than we do. And that's certainly another goal. I guess I should have put that down too, as I think really important for us to engage with them in a thoughtful way, so that, I mean, it's all one taxpayer. We have our area that we look at, and they have theirs, but the two really need to work together. And particularly if we're building very dense housing right and left, which brings in lots more children, it has an impact on the schools.
They reacted on Monday nights.
Yeah. So those conversations, I think, would be helpful, and I thought it might be smart to start with a dinner.
It has to be before 6:30 because that's when Violet has to put her baby to bed, and I want to see the baby.
Oh.
I want to meet.
A baby goes to bed at 6:30?
Well, I think that's what she said before. I said, well, "Did you
my
bring your baby to the meeting on
6:30,
Monday night?"
man,
She's like,
I never
"No,
had
it
a
has to
kid
go."
like that. And is that her first? Maybe. Yeah, right.
A
So,
little more lax. Transition from man to zone defense.
and so Common Roots was willing to have us go there.
Oh,
They have a
nice.
dining room and they could serve some food, and so I'm looking for a date. So you don't need to tell me. Andrew isn't even here. So, but if you can think about that, I will work with. I guess Alex is the new chair.
Oh,
I was told.
okay.
Is that right? Alex
That's what I
McHenry was, and see if he's also compatible with that idea, and then we'll find a place or a date. So,
Yeah.
are there, does that sound? Are you amenable to
Sounds like
sort
a
of
great idea.
reaching out that way initially?
April 23rd to the 30th.
Well, you know, I was hoping they would be really soon,
Okay, good.
but I think, you know, will you look at your calendars for next week? You know, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm gone the week after.
I think it's going to be really hard to pull off for next week because
Okay.
it has to be a publicly warned meeting,
Oh, okay.
and so we'd
Oh,
have
that's
to
right.
know. We'd have to finalize it today to warn tomorrow.
Well, if people would send me, if they know they're going to be out of state for like on a vacation or just on business, if you let me know, then I can work with Alex and find out from the school board. Maybe we can find. I mean, maybe it won't be till May. I don't know, but I just think it would be a good way to. They have some new members, and we do, and we all care about the community. So it would be nice to really have some good conversations going forward about where we go with all of our big bonding thoughts. Well, I mean, our side,
Make it a light
our
dinner.
side of the street is, you know, people are talking about they want a rec
Bonding.
center. So you don't want to
Oh,
go for a rec
my.
center and a new school the same year
Right.
or whatever. And maybe they can work together and it can be, you know. I don't know. Okay, so if you will let me know those dates, I'll try to set something up, and that would be good, and then we can get to know each other too. All right. Is there any other business? Okay. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Hi.
Aye. Thank you.
This will be yours.